Welcome to episode 9 of CTO Friend the Podcast, where founders come to learn how to manage a tech startup. This is Mitchie and I'm with Amaury Khalifi. Hi, Amaury.
Hi, Mitchie, and welcome startuppers to today's podcast. In this episode, we are going to go through the roadmap definition process, covering how to prioritize all the ideas you came up with and structure them into versions with required budgets and resources.
Now remember that this first series of the podcast, we're working our way down Amaury's book. We're going through all the tips and real startup experiences he's gathered throughout the years. So if you're a founder without technical background, listen up because you're in the right place. Let's just go ahead and jump in, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, today, Amaury and I decided to have a little bit of a role play where he's going to pretty much quiz me on what I've learned working with him, because we have worked a lot in this topic, roadmap definition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We were covering it in creating some online courses on it as well. And she knew it by heart. And now I feel like because it is a process that can be a bit complex, it can be better for you to understand if someone that just learned it rephrase it for you. And of course, I'm going to add details if it's required.
Yes.
So tell me, what did you get, Mitchie? Tell me, what is a roadmap?
What is a roadmap? Okay, well, a roadmap is pretty much just a detailed plan of what you want to do in your app and where you want to go and how much it's going to cost. So it has to have this general idea of what you're doing to achieve your goals in step-by-step basis. And it's usually shown in a technical plan presentation based on the vision of your project. You know, like we talked, building your business vision, that would be episode 4, if I'm not mistaken. It's based on that, but it's attainable steps, executable steps.
Absolutely. When you have this idea, you start from this idea, you brainstorm, and we cover that on the previous episode. And then you will need to position your product. You have that position, that vision. And from that vision, you put in place a plan. And this plan will tell you how much it costs, etc., which type of resources, if you need to hire someone, etc. Okay. So next, why is that useful? What are you going to do with this roadmap?
Well, like I said, it's usually shown in a presentation. So we use the roadmap to attract investors, attract incubators, to also show to developers and possible providers, technical teams, so that they can go through with the executable steps. And also, the idea with the roadmap is not to only say that you have an idea, but that you actually have a clue on how to make it happen. You know how to do it. You've already done the research and gone through the steps, and you have a clear plan.
Okay, great. So we have lots of founders that are listening this episode. Tell them, how can they build their own roadmap? What's the process behind building that roadmap?
So we are going to cover all of this. So let's just go ahead and start with the few steps that you need to go through. First, we need to prioritize the features, right? Then you need to structure the roadmap. We go through the product development, global costs, in a general manner. We identify the required resources, and then we compile cost, planning, and everything that we've done so far into a presentation, which would be the technical plan or the roadmap presentation. Now, we are going to cover this last step in the following episode, how to present a roadmap presentation. So we are covering the first 5 today, or I'm going to try to cover the first 5 today, and Amaury's going to help me.
You do some very good job so far. Okay, great. So we've got lots of ideas. Last time, I have a wall in front of me with lots of post-its. That's usually what I recommend to do for the brainstorming. What's next? What can I do with these post-its?
Okay, well, just quick reminder, we did cover the productivity hacks, brainstorming, and product planning on episode 6 of the podcast. If you haven't heard that, go ahead and hear it. So you're on this step. You have your visual idea of what's gone through your head. And the first exercise that you're going to do is you're going to take 10 to 12 post-its and you're going to do like a self-reflection exercise, right? So you're going to write down on each post-it one value, one personal value, like something that represents you. It can be a noun, it could be an adjective. This is not supposed to be about the product or the company itself. It's about you as a person. If you are building this with a co-founder, you should definitely do this exercise with them so that it makes sense. All of the roadmap is built around you and your co-founder.
Yeah.
Now, once you have...
Yeah. The goal is that you have a product that really represents you, like Steve Jobs put his own personality in Apple, etc., etc. So we need to be able to figure out where this product comes from and from which person.
Okay, good. Yes. So now we need to qualify the ideas. We need to make sure that they become stories. So once you have your list of values, you're going to go back to that visual representation of your brainstorming, and you're going to take everything you wrote down and turn it into a feature, right? So in order to do that, you need to make it a story. We have a format for that you can follow, and that would be as a parentheses user A, I can parentheses do something so that parentheses I get a benefit. So what does that mean? You can take any of the users or any of the people that are going to interact with your product, and that will be what you're going to put in user, right? So for example, as a user of the app, or as a buyer, or as a client, or as a provider, whoever's going to use your app, I can an action, right? I can buy, I can sell, I can share, I can do something so that I can get a benefit. So whatever benefit they want to do, I can earn more money, I don't know. There's a lot of benefits for people out there. So you get the idea, you get the format, right?
Yeah, and that story format comes from the agile methodology. And this is a small action. We should not just say, I'm going to sell on the platform. It's maybe too big, but I'm going to put an article on and upload an article description in order to sell this. A story should not be bigger than 3 days of work for a developer. And if it's more than that, you should split that story into sub-tasks to create smaller, and that will help you to plan your project and to evaluate how much time and cost it's gonna take.
Exactly. So the features that you have on the wall, you need to make them into bite-sized features, and each of those bite-sized features will become a bite-sized story. Now, once you have those stories, and you'll probably have a bunch of them, I want you to assign a value to each story, right? So the values that we were just talking about, the personal values that you wrote down about yourself. You can repeat values, of course. The idea, if I'm not mistaken, Amaury, you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
would be to place one value per story, right? A story shouldn't have more than one.
Yes, absolutely. And what I recommend to do is now to put all that stories and values line into just a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet that will help you to prioritize down the road. Okay,
perfect. Yes. Now, once you're done with assigning values to that feature list, you're going to forget about that list. You're going to set it aside, and you're going to start prioritizing, right? Now, you should have around 12 values, okay? The idea would be for you to look at those values and define which 6 of those are the most important for you. What describes you most, and what is it that you value most in life? And then after you've chosen the 6, you choose 3, right? So it's pretty much going over what you already have and what already represents you. But making sure that you have your priorities in order, that you know what you want and you know who you are in life. This is a full-on self-reflection exercise, full-on psychology.
Yeah, identifying what represents you the most and what is the most important for you, and then we will attach that to the product. So how can we attach that to the product roadmap?
Well, once you've prioritized your values, you need to set up a score system, right? So let's say the 3 most important values that you've decided are the most important to you are going to have, for example, 10 points. That's the score. It's the highest score that you can give them. The ones that aren't exactly the 3 most important, but they're part of the 6 most important, you can give them 6, for example. And then when you go to the rest, then out of those 6 or 5 or 4, if maybe you did less than 12, you're going to put a value of 0 or a value of 3, something like that. It's just to make sure that it represents within the product and within the features what you care personally about this feature.
That's very well described. Thank you. I feel like I wanted to add something, but I have nothing else to add. Good job.
Good. Okay, good. I'm a little bit nervous, I have to admit.
That's fine. You do it well. So, okay, basically we have this list, features, and we have a score on each features based on what represent us. What's next?
Next, we need to take into consideration what your customer wants, what people really want. So the idea of you doing a startup is pretty much helping people and providing something that people are willing to pay for, right? So this is a huge factor when prioritizing what you're going to develop first, develop second, and develop third. In this situation, you need to have a value, a perceived value, or a perceived, let's say, benefit that the customer is going to get for each feature, right? So there's, for example, you have 1 to 10 for the score, and 1 would be, it would be nice to have this feature, nice indifference. And then score 10, which is like super useful. This is the basis of all your operations. This has to be in your app, etc., etc. And if I'm not mistaken, Amaury, you actually have some tools for customer surveys that our listeners can use, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, when you get started, you don't have that information. So you just use tools like we covered in the episode Know Your Customer, the number 5, if I'm right. There is a tools like the empathy map. The empathy map enables you to describe a customer, what he thinks, etc., etc. So you just establish hypothesis. And then from this hypothesis, you just confirm them and ask them through survey, through social media, through maybe one-on-one interactions, and to confirm that what you are about to build will be useful for them or not. That's the way you can evaluate that. On a bigger scale, what you can do is to use tools like user voice or get satisfactions. The principle of these tools is not only to have just a pop-up or a small bar on the left of your website to enable people to provide you feedbacks, but it also enables you as a brand to let people share their feedbacks and their suggestions in terms of new features and put a vote system so that you will have your own users going to vote on what will be the features the most useful for them and they therefore would like to see in the future versions.
Exactly. Now, once you have all of this data, you just need to do the same exercise to prioritize. You need to set up a score system. You can start by giving the highest score to the most important one and work your way down, or you can just give 10 points to the 3 most important ones, whatever you want to do, and add it into that same Excel spreadsheet that you're working with. And that should already take care of the customer satisfaction or customer, let's say, benefit of the equation. That's exercise number 2, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But so far we covered the value, what we want to put, we covered what the customer want to put in the product, but there is something missing, right? What's missing in that prioritization exercise?
Well, when you're a startup founder, and early stage startup founders usually lack funds. That's like the most important thing. You have the time that it takes to develop an application, the costs, and the complexity, because if you're starting out, you may not be able to hire a super developer, and if you have very complex features, they might have a really hard time and you might end up wasting a lot of money getting to those features. So the third exercise is to do the same prioritization, but with the complexity, delay, and costs. The idea would be to identify first for each feature, how many screens will they need, right? So if, for example, you have a feature that will only need one screen, you can assign, let's say, $1,000 or euros per screen, right? This may change if you take less of one resource or more of another, but just like a general estimate, you can just use $1,000 per screen. And the idea would be if you have another feature that takes more screens, this will actually give it less of a score. So it's not going to rank as high because it's too complicated or too time consuming or too costly. They're all pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the screen is not only the only ruler that you have, because of course we can roughly identify the cost of a feature through the screen, but may they have some complex algorithm behind if you need to integrate AI or if you need to connect some IoT devices, etc. So you can just estimate what will be the complexity of each screen, and then we can put a score to it, and you can guess this is a score from 1 to 10.
Exactly. You just put it on that spreadsheet and let it do its work.
Absolutely.
The idea would be that at the end, each of these three categories, your personal value score, your customer perceived benefit score, and the complexity and cost score, they're all going to be there in the total amount of points that you're going to get. You can add them up. If for some reason there's one of these areas that you appreciate a little bit more, you can even put like coefficient there and multiply it by 2 if, let's say, your personal values are super important to you. But 1-1-1, it's a good ratio. It works, right?
That's basically what I have in the template. And by the way, you can access to the template of this compilation directly through the link we're going to put on the show notes. Okay.
That's right.
We basically now have a score on each feature. How can we prioritize that in a version?
Okay, well, all of your features are in a list. Each feature has its own final score, right? You can go ahead and set up a score range, not just like a system to score your features, but a range in which you classify when things are less important for your customers, for your personal values, and for costs. You're going to put that in the third stage. When things are most important, you're going to put it in the first stage, and the things that lie in the middle are going to go, of course, in the second stage. The score range that Amaury suggests is if you have less than 15 points, that should be stage 3. If it's between 15 and 23 points, that should be stage 2. And if it's more than 23 points, that should be stage 1. Of course, this is based in a score system that is 1-1-1. We're not multiplying any of the factors. If you do use a different coefficient, if an area is more important to you, you need to take that into consideration and change the score range accordingly, right?
Yeah. So now what is important to understand is that it's just a quite suggestive way to organize your idea and you prioritize it through your value, etc. But that's not going to work for everything. You might know the business model canvas. The business model canvas says that you need to have a balanced ecosystem between every person that is around your business. Could be partners, could be buyers, sellers, etc., etc. You as a company as well. So basically, we can summarize this ecosystem in desires, contribution, and received value. Like if you have buyers, they are going to have some desires. Basically, you're going to provide them what they desire the most. They are going to contribute either by paying or by just subscribing or giving their time, etc. And they will receive value in exchange. And you need to be sure that on each version that you will take out of this Excel spreadsheet, you have a balanced version, which means that you might need to move one feature to the version 1 to the version 2 and therefore to the version another one to the version 2 to the version 1 in order to be sure that everyone gets something on each version and that you have a balanced ecosystem that can be a real business model.
Exactly. A good way to do this is once you have the features on the spreadsheet that you might want to do in each version is to put it on Post-its. Post-its are awesome. They have sticky parts at the back and you can move them around. So just go ahead and separate, just like a canvas in your desk, for example. You have all of the people that are, let's say, the people that are involved with your product, your company, yourself, your clients, your providers, sellers, buyers, whatever you have, depends on your company. You're going to have them on one side, and then on top, you're going to have the different versions. So you're going to pretty much create a grid. And you need to make sure that on each one, you have someone's getting a desire satisfied, someone's getting a contribution, or someone's providing a contribution, and someone's receiving a value. All of those agents in that company need to be receiving something in that transaction, in that product, need to be taking something out of it, and they need to be providing something, and they need to have their desires met. They all need to do that. So make sure that if you have that in Post-its, you can put your features on the Post-its and play around with what you want to do. Once you find a way that everything's balanced, you can put that up on your spreadsheet and get it all set up for the next stage.
Absolutely. Always having the visualization of your roadmap will help you. And if you are like me, you have lots of Post-its, you can even pick some colors. One colors for buyers, others for sellers, other for you as a company and partners. And that will be very easy for you to see on each column, the version 0, 1, 2, if you have Post-its for everyone and everyone gets the benefits on this ecosystem.
They all need to be equally colorful.
Yes, absolutely, on each version. Okay, so now you have the version of your product, the roadmap based on version. What should you do next?
Well, next is the nitty-gritty. Next is costs and planning. You need to make sure once you have this whole thing rearranged, you need to once more evaluate the cost of each stage. So this is going to be a little bit more specific than what we did last time. Just $1,000 per screen is a very general estimate. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of research and get the fees of what you would need for a front-end developer or a back-end developer or a UX designer, whatever you need to have, an IT architect. They have their own fees per day or per hour. And you need to pretty much identify what kind of resources you're going to need, how much do they usually cost, and how much time you're going to use those resources for. If you are identifying more of one need, more of another, if it's going to be too expensive to hire within your country, for example, and you might need to outsource, this is a time to identify all of those needs. Who do you need to hire? If you need to outsource, how much it's going to cost, how much time you're going to invest in it. Absolutely. All of that is going to be a little bit overwhelming. But once you've done the previous steps, it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, by the way, why I also put the roadmap definition course on my CTO Friend website, because you have all that spreadsheets that helps you to define all that costs and to just help you. And you just need to put the number of days for each profile. And at the end, you have all the compiled costs per version, per type of profile, etc. And you can decide if for this type of profile, you should better hire someone or maybe get a freelancer because it's just 5 or 10 days as example. That will help you in your decision making to build the right team depending on your roadmap, what you want to build, your own investment, because of course you will see that maybe what you've put on the roadmap do not fit to your budget. So you will have to tweak it for a bit and switch and decide maybe to postpone some features, etc. and readapt things. Or maybe find workaround to not investing right away on the huge product, but we're going to cover that later and in future episode, I mean. And yeah, you will have in one place this global overview of how much it costs, the planning, and everything that an investor would want to know about your project. And that will structure the financial aspect of your project.
That's right. And once you have each stage with the features that you need to do, once you've identified that, okay, this is going to be a little bit too costly, let me just move these features to the other stage, and you've done all of that tweaking, you need to identify what moves you from one version to the other. Like, at what time are you ready to move on to the next stage? And to do that, you have KPIs, which I didn't know what they were, but I learned they're key performance indicators. And what that means is just simply set a goal for each version. So, for example, on your first version, you would like to have, by the end of it, 1,000 users and 3 paying customers. It's pretty simple. It's, you're not setting your bar too high, but it's a building stone. It's a place to start. And that's the goal you want to get to. And once you're there, you're ready and it's time to move on to the next version, right?
Absolutely. That's well said. The KPI, we often forget that's what is the most important, because we just want to build a business. We set a goals. We just need to reach that goals. If we miss our goals, we did something wrong. And so that's a very, very good indicator on our own performance as founder, as a team, as a company. And that's everything. That's what we will see and what we'll look for an investor or an accelerator. They will want you to succeed as well as, I guess, you want to succeed as well as a startup founders. Wow. Okay. I have to say that you did a great job. Thank you, Mitchie, for all that description. I feel like it really helps people to get that from someone else than me. That I'm used to tell that, and I'm very happy to see that you were able to learn from it as well. Okay. Next.
Well, next is pretty much compiling all of what you've done and putting in a slideshow, making sure that you can show it to people. And that's exactly what we're going to cover next. How to make a template and how to make sure that you have your product positioning right and you're showing it all properly, and how to share it with possible providers, investors, accelerators. It's all going to be there, and we are going to provide a free template for that. So looking forward to that. Yeah. Quick thing that I wanted to say for the KPIs, and this is something that we didn't prepare beforehand, but I read it in one of your retrospective articles, if I'm not mistaken, was that when you're setting up your goals, you shouldn't aim too high and you shouldn't aim too low. You need to make sure that you are challenging yourself, of course, that you are going towards where you want to go. You don't want to be too mediocre with the goal setting process. But if you're recognizing that each week or each month, or however you're separating your planning process, you are not getting to even 30% or 40% of the goals that you set, you need to rearrange. I mean, you need to retweak your goals and make sure that they are achievable. In fact, achievable. I'm not sure what is the percentage that you said. I think it was like 60% or something like that.
I feel like it's all about a personal perspective. For my own goals, I feel like I set kind of a challenging goals, and I'd be sure to be between 60 to 80%, which means that I would be able to reach the 100% or even over. And yeah, that's for my personal goal. For a startup, I would prefer you to share with investors, etc., what would be the 60%. And what you want, what the KPI are at 60%, and set some KPI higher for you to be sure to at least reach the goals that you shared with people.
Exactly, to overachieve.
Yes, the commitment is not always the same for personal perspective, and when people see you, that might be good to be sure that you are not going to be judged because you did not reach 100% of your results.
Exactly. So get a little bit more challenging goals when it's about you as a startup founder, but don't reach too high on your startup goals, because it is going to be a little bit hectic, and you do want to make sure that you are being punctual in your deadlines and you are having a good image with your customers and your providers. Okay, that's clear. Clear enough.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mitchie. I think this one was great. And tell us if you liked this play role, the fact that Mitchie described you the process. Is there anything else we forgot to mention, Mitchie?
Well, we're still role-playing. I don't think so. I think we've covered most of it. We are going to cover roadmap presentation next. So all about the template, like I mentioned. If you do want to learn more about this startup tech management that we're discussing right now, we have, like Amaury mentioned, a roadmap definition course with spreadsheets and templates and all of that in MyCTOfriend.co, along with a bunch of blog posts and articles and videos that have a lot of useful advice.
Thank you. And today's episode was number 9. So if you want to check out the links, it's on myctofriend.co/9. And if you want to get all the episodes, you just need to put /podcast at the end, myctofriend.co/podcast. And by the way, remember, we are writing my books this time together with the help of Mitchie, and you can pre-order your book on startupwithoutcto.com. And if you do so, you will get the digital version 2 months before the official launch. So yeah, startupwithoutcto.com. Thank you, Mitchie. Thank you, and I look forward for the next time. And again, very, very good job for this payroll. Tell us if you appreciate it, and we will keep going next time for the roadmap presentation, which is a huge topic as well, because you need to convince people, investors, accelerators, as well as clients.
Exactly.
Thanks, Mitchie.
Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Amaury, for the opportunity for the role play. And you can give us your feedback in myctofriend.co/podcast. Make sure that you leave a review in iTunes and wherever you're listening to this podcast. Make sure you share with your startupper friends if you find this useful. And until next time.
Take care. Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
Mitchie.